All right, should we get started? I think we have all the committee members here. Karen, did you want to wait for any of the other panel people?
I think we have everyone here. Maybe there might be one or two missing, but their counterpart is here. So I think we can go ahead.
Okay.
First off, I wanted to welcome all our guests that have been so gracious and willing to speak to us. Our group has a lot to do in a very short time. So getting together in this way will be very helpful to us. And we know it's the day before the holiday, and a special thanks. Let me introduce our guests to our committee first. Ken Trester is city council member, our former mayor up till a couple weeks ago. He lives on the harbor, I believe on your association there too.
Right.
Another of our group members is Pat Burrows. He's also a resident on the harbor. He is a member of the Harbor Authority. He's practiced environmental law. He has a civil engineering degree from Michigan Tech. Another member is Bob Schuchman. Sorry if I hurt your name there, Schuchman.
That's close enough, Karen. Well done.
Okay. In addition to being a resident and a boater, he is co-director of the Michigan Technological Research Institute, and he is working on a DNR grant researching environmental and water quality contaminated sediments of our entire harbor area. Tim Straker is also on our committee. He is a resident, chairman of our Historic District Commission. He's a boater. He's passionate about the health of the harbor and its role in the vitality of our community. Scott Dean, also a member of City Council. He's a resident boater, paddle boater. He's an executive with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. Also on the call is Garnet Lewis. She's City Council Mayor Pro Tem, a resident on the harbor. And Dan Callum may be on the call. I don't think I saw him. He is the Greenway manager of the Outdoor Discovery Center. Our guest panel, and forgive me if I ruin your name, Melissa DeSimone. Melissa is the executive director of Michigan Lakes and Streams Association. She says she's not an expert by any means, but she is very familiar with what others are using on their inland lakes. Zach Berry and Ryan Shawland,
yes,
with Aquatic Doctors. We're familiar with them, especially because they're working with the city of Douglas in Wades Bayou, and I believe a broader area this spring. Andy Tomaszewski and Jason Brookstra are with PLM Lake and Management. At our last meeting, you were talking about Port Sheldon and how that lake there has transformed over the last couple of years. PLM Lake and Land Management are treating that lake, and they're on the call too. Michael Smith, he is with
Hello.
MTG. Hi, Mike. He's with MTG Dash Divers. And he's been using Dash in Lake Leelanau, among others. I discovered him through Lake Leelanau, though. And then Kim Arter, she is with Laketon Township, just in the Muskegon area. She is the township supervisor and is on the Bear Lake Association board, and they have been treating milfoil in that lake too. So I am going to turn it over to Ken Trester, and he will moderate the meeting. Go for it.
Thank you, Karen. And you are to be commended for bringing this group together. I mean, this is a fantastic group, a fantastic resource for us. So, and I appreciate you all for joining us today. There's an item on our agenda for public comment. So if there's anyone who's not on the committee who'd like to make a comment before we get started, please go ahead, unmute yourself. And okay, I think everybody here is either on the panel or on the committee. So let's get started. Melissa, you're listed first. Would you like to go ahead?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So you did a great job with my name. It's Melissa DeSimone. I'm the executive director of Michigan Lakes and Streams Association. So we have members all around the state, and we have meetings with them where we talk about their aquatic invasive species issues. And so, as far as Eurasian water milfoil goes, that's a extremely common one. Not even a priority for some of the state agencies anymore because it's so common. But there nonetheless, and still provides or offers issues for navigability and biodiversity. So those are definitely reasons to work on that Eurasian water milfoil. I also own property on a lake. I'm on Gravel Lake, which is in Van Buren County, so not too far away. And we also battle Eurasian water milfoil ourselves. And I took a look at the notes from your previous meeting and some of the materials, and it looks like you've explored a lot of the avenues that we are aware of, that our members have discussed. It used to be a long time ago that people really liked weevils, but those seem to be harder to find. Chemical treatment, I think, would be by far the most popular avenue that people take with Eurasian water milfoil control. And I am getting a lot more interest. Members are very interested in DASH, the diver assisted suction harvesting. So, that I think would be an overview of what we're seeing around the state. It doesn't sound like it's very much different than what a lot of you have already started to look into, but I'd be happy to answer any questions, more specifically about what other lakes are doing if that comes up. So there's my little intro. Was that good for everyone?
Thank you.
An offer? Okay.
Any questions for Melissa at this point? Okay, then Zach Berry and Ryan are next.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to come and, speak with you guys, whether it be in person or through Zoom. But we're with Aquatic Doctors Lake Management. This is kind of our bread and butter is, tackling invasive species primarily is that kind of our biggest job of the year. We deal with milfoil every single day. I mean, it's kind of something that's been introduced to the Great Lakes, unfortunately. And, we don't see it going anywhere with, that's the typical invasive species. It's super prolific, can grow quickly, can grow densely, and can outcompete pretty much anything it comes across. So we've got experience dealing with milfoil in pretty much any system you could think of, anywhere from a small, backyard pond to a large lake system like City of Douglas, where we're treating, a multitude of acres of matted out nasty milfoil with great success on top of that, so we've kind of seen it all when it comes to the stuff. And we've got pretty much access to any products that are, obviously legal to use in the state of Michigan to tackle the problem, so, a lot of the times you deal with certain milfoil species are, I guess, can build up a tolerance to certain products. So we make sure that we rotate the products that we use to avoid that and get optimal treatment results and handling that milfoil problem. But yeah, I don't know.
Mainly use herbicides and
herbicides. Yeah, herbicides and herbicides is, basically what we do. Everything we do is in cooperation with the state of Michigan through EGLE. And yeah, that's kind of the spiel I got. I don't know if Ryan wanted to add anything, but I think
pretty straightforward. Our focus is the herbicides and algicides treatments. That's where we focus. We do have some firsthand experience working with the City of Douglas over in Wade's Bayou last year. We had some great success with that, and we've already signed them up for next year, so they're going to be continuing next year. So that's kind of our angle. Certainly interested in hearing other people and their different avenues. I'm a scuba diver, so I'm quite interested in hearing the DASH diver. That's pretty intriguing.
Okay, thanks. Any questions from the committee?
I have a question. This is Pat Burrows. We have problems with common duckweed, as well as coontail weed. And I'm wondering what your experience has been with those two, as well as milfoil, and any recommendations you might have. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just same, those kind of go hand in hand with milfoil. We see coontail, we see duckweed, and these are all things that we've taken care of. And over at the city of Douglas, duckweed was a big problem there. So, we have to work within our permit, kind of through the state. But yeah, we have products that tackle both, and we're able to use those products to tackle both coontail and duckweed as well during those treatments.
We do expect, especially in your location, there will be some guidelines that the state of Michigan would impose in regards to the difference between native and exotics. The state's going to be very hesitant to use algicides, copper-based products, and things like that. So they're going to be very restrictive on native plants. But when you get into the milfoil, the exotics, and things like that, they're much more open to the herbicide use.
So is the duckweed and the coonweed native then?
They are native, yes. So they may impose, locations where you can treat here, you can't treat here, you can't treat past this depth. Those kinds of things will influence the permit and what the state of Michigan will allow.
Can I have one quick question?
Please go ahead.
In general, this is Tim Straker speaking, by the way. In general, I was looking at all the research that everyone sent for us to read prior to this meeting. And I was curious between harvesting and diving and herbicide and weevils and long-term aeration, all of those things, there seemed to be a difference between sort of inland lakes and lack of flow versus our situation with flow. So that's just a comment that I'm listening for as each of you sort of share your approach. But for you guys in particular, is there a difference in Douglas in terms of flow and the way the river is situated and its effectiveness with the herbicide versus what you would see with us in Saugatuck?
With not being, there is flow in that bayou. Obviously, it's the Kalamazoo River, so there's always a little bit of flow in those systems. The flowing water didn't seem to negatively impact our treatments last year, which was a positive thing. We do account for that. So with that being said, I would have to kind of investigate to see how much flow you guys are getting up there compared to Wade's Bayou. But I would imagine, looking at the location of the river, that it should be pretty, as far as where you guys are in Douglas, flowing under the Blue Star Highway there. I would suspect that the flow rates would be about the same, because the treatment area, looking at the map that you had sent, seems to be more of out of the mainstream. Maybe so similar to Douglas Bayou, but kind of on the north side as opposed to the south side.
Okay, thank you.
I would expect similar, I guess, flows in those two areas.
That's helpful. Thank you.
So this is Pat Burrows. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Pat.
No, go ahead, Pat.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I have another question though, and it does have to do with water velocity. I understand that milfoil doesn't grow below 6 or 8 feet. Am I correct in that assumption?
It can grow. We've seen it grow in depths of over 20 feet. It's dependent on water clarity. Can the sunlight, get down to those depths? Can that plant, obviously a milfoil is a rooted plant, a lightly rooted plant at that. So, in areas of higher flow, you're likely not going to see any milfoil. Those areas of low flow, backwater areas, that's where you see your main milfoil growth. But yeah, no, milfoil can grow anywhere. Like I said, we've seen it grow as, over 20 feet deep. It's just, if the water quality is correct there and it can get the nutrients and the sunlight that it needs, it can certainly grow that deep.
Well, I guess that was my point, is that in the deeper water, we have higher velocity normally. Yes. And so probably the milfoil problem isn't as great in the deeper water and the higher velocity areas. Mm-hmm. So that shouldn't pose a great deal of concern in the use of chemicals in the shallower areas. Mm-hmm. If I've got that correct.
Yeah.
In most
Absolutely.
cases, when you're talking herbicides, in a situation like that, you're going to be using granular products that are going to be much less susceptible to the influence of the current and the flow.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Bob Shuckman. I incidentally have taken a number of surface current measurements in both now off Douglas as well as in the what I call the main part of Kalamazoo Lake. Ryan, you are right where the Eurasian milfoil is. The current slows down as it goes under the Blue Star Bridge. It shags a right as well as the main current continues out into Lake Michigan. But we end up with almost stagnant water where the Eurasian milfoil. But that's just for knowledge for this working group. My question for the aquatic doctors, after reading all the material, yeah, I think we're going to end up with some herbicide kind of treatment. But have you guys done combinations so that we can work short-term, long-term solutions, or use strictly the kind of the herbicide guys? What I'm really asking is, have you worked with other folks that may, for example, put in weevils or something else, or are you a kind of a single solution group?
No, we're in regards to weevils, as Melissa was saying, they're very, very uncommon now, and something that's kind of not being used very much. But yeah, we're basically one of those. Let's get the job done, and whatever needs, whatever tools to get the results, let's do it. We have harvested. We've used granular products. We've used liquid products. We've used systemic products. We've used contact herbicides. So we're of the opinion that the most important thing is getting the job done to the customer satisfaction and keeping it within the parameters of legalities and permit issues. And that's our goal and that's our purpose. So if we get to a situation where we're just not finding optimal results with a herbicide, and it looks like you can get some results that are going to be a little bit more effective with a harvester, then by all means, that's what we're here for. We're here to get you guys in the condition that you want that water, whether it's with our herbicides or with a harvester or whatever the case may be.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Scott?
Yeah, just to ask about the Douglas experience in Wade's Bayou. Am I correct that you had to go through the process of getting folks that had property on the bayou get their permission to apply?
Yep.
Are you familiar with that process in terms of communicating to the public, getting their buy-in to the treatment? I mean, did you work directly with Douglas, or did you do some of that on your own? If you could just explain that process, please.
Yeah. So what we did is the city of Douglas basically sent us just a few frequently asked questions that they were getting from their residents along the bayou. So I kind of filled that out, kind of a Q&A deal. And then they distributed that to the persons located on the water. And then after that was, if the person was up for having that treatment done on their property, we gave the city of Douglas kind of that little signature page of their authorization. And they passed it out among the residents, and then the residents returned those signatures to the city of Douglas, and then the city of Douglas passed on that information to us so we could file for the permit.
Did you have some that declined, and how did that affect your overall program?
Yeah, we did. We had, I think, 2 residents out of all of them which declined, which was pretty good. We always say that obviously when we're treating an area, we want to be able to tackle as much of that problem area as possible to prevent that milfoil from, I guess, growing. So, I mean, the more you treat and the more you can take care of, the less likely it is that milfoil is going to be able to spread. So that was kind of the big thing there. What we did is, we kind of just had to cut out areas of our treatment area where those frontages existed. and we just kind of worked around them. So we have, you know, the plat maps and the property lines there, and we can just kind of, what we based our map off in our treatments off of those, to where we kind of skimmed over their property to where they were left untouched.
Okay, and I don't want to forget to, you know, go to the other speakers, but just one more for you, since you've worked with Douglas, and we're a neighbor of Douglas, obviously.
Sure, yeah.
Are there any efficiencies or cost savings that we might be able to accrue if we were to find a way to partner with Douglas, on the firm like yourselves? I don't know if we're too late or not.
No, I mean, it's actually, you know, you guys are, you know, it's perfect timing for it, you know, take it a head start this, you know, this early, and it gives us time to gather the information that we need from the residents, from you guys, and be able to get everything we need in line to file for that permit come late winter, early spring. So as far as timing, we're looking pretty good there. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we team up efforts with the city of Douglas and you guys, we can certainly offer some cost savings for both cities.
Yeah, there'd be a volume cost, basically a price per acre savings, and also the permit. What we would do is we would attempt to get both jobs, so to speak, on the same permit, and you'd be able to split the permit fee with the city of Douglas. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Guys, once a landowner gives permission, is that a permanent permission, or do we have to go back every year and repeat the process?
I believe it's, well, so it's, I think for the duration of the permit, if I
believe so, yeah.
remember right.
Okay.
So if it's a multi-year permit, and then as I'd say, as long as the resident doesn't move, you know, that might be one thing. I know the city of Douglas is collecting signatures again this year, just to make sure everybody's good again. And if they don't want, you know, if they don't want treatment, or someone wants to back out of that, they're able to do so. But yeah, as far as I understand, it's for the duration of the permit.
Thank you. We can come back with questions during the discussion period, but let's move on to the PLM folks. Who do we have here, Jason or Andy?
Hi, this is Andy. I'm with PLM Lake and Land Management. We've been in the business of managing water bodies for over 40 years. I've been with the company for 20 years. My job there is I'm the Southern Lakes Manager, so I handle all the lakes in the southwest region of the state. We've been in business for 40 years. We consider ourselves a full-service lake management company. You know, the majority of our work revolves around herbicide and algicide applications, but our company owns and operates 2 mechanical weed harvesters. We've done a number of large-scale aeration projects in the state. In the past, we have worked with weevils and other technologies to manage different aquatic problems. So, you know, we kind of do it all. Most of our staff have educational backgrounds, biologists, ecologists, environmental scientists. I have a degree in natural resource ecology and management from the University of Michigan. You know, we've been doing this a long time. The majority of our work in the state does revolve around Lake Eurasian water milfoil. You know, there are other exotics, just kabamba, curly pondweed, starry stonewort. So, you know, we do take care of a lot of different species, as well as native species if they're required. So, our approach to dealing with milfoil, you know, after obviously, you know, we don't implement our harvesters on milfoil due to the chance of fragmenting it and spreading it, as well as it's just a short-term relief method. You're not going to get any long-term benefits out of it. You know, when you put together a program, you know, you have to look at the sites, the specific site, and make a recommendation based on, you know, the site condition. You know, there's options such as whole lake, you know, unique types of treatments like whole lake sonar treatments or fluoridone treatments, which are very effective at eliminating Eurasian water milfoil lake-wide. There's spot treatment-based methods, either using systemic liquid products or systemic granular products. such as Sculpin, Renovate 3, Renovate OTF, Navigate. And then there's the contact herbicides, which can effectively control milfoil, but it's just a short-term fix. Looking at the size of the lake, the depth of the milfoil, one thing that's important, that the aquatic doctors folks mentioned, that there has been a increasing resistance in some water bodies to these herbicide options. One of the biggest areas of research right now in Eurasian water milfoil is the topic of hybrids. When Eurasian water milfoil first came to the U.S., it was a clone of of the Eurasian type. What they found in the last 10 to 15 years is that, when they do genetic analysis on the milfoils, they're not pure Eurasian water milfoil anymore. They've been hybridizing with our native types. So by doing that, they can gain traits, resistant traits to herbicides, which make them a little tougher to control. So, looking at the background information on the maps of your site there, and the fact that it is part of the Kalamazoo River with flow, really rules out the whole lake sonar treatment option, just because that product needs to sit in the water for, a 60-day period, which you're probably not likely to get in your situation. Some of the systemic herbicides, even though there is little to no flow in some of those areas, it's still a concern because some of those products need up to 10 to 12 hours of contact time for full uptake. There might be a little bit of maybe a little bit of an issue with that there. Ideally, I think you would want a product that had extremely fast uptake for that situation, which makes me look at a newer product called Procelicor. It's been out since midsummer of 2018, or 2019. So the 2020 season was pretty much our first year to use that product and see what its capabilities are. And as we've used it this summer, the benefit of Procelicor is that it has fast uptake, and two, it doesn't matter if it's a hybrid or resistant, it'll affect hybrids and Eurasian milfoil types both equally. So, that's off the top of my head, that might be a option that I would recommend based on this project site. I think it might be a good fit. In addition, I was able to size up the circled areas there using GIS this afternoon, and it looks like that area is approximately 17 to 20 acres if that's the appropriate size. The manufacturer of this herbicide does give a 3-year guarantee on milfoil regrowth in that area if the size of the treatment area is 10 acres or more. So that'll be another benefit of using that product. So
any questions?
I have a question, Ken. I understand that PLM did work on Lake Columbia near Brooklyn, Michigan. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I started that program with them. Oh, it might have been 2006. I worked with Dave. I can't remember his last name.
You just muted yourself.
I worked out there up until about 4 years ago. We had opened an office in East Lansing, And that location was much better suited to, logistically to handle Lake Columbia. So,
Well, my question about Lake Columbia is that I understand that your treatment that you used within the last year was to pretty much eradicate all of the aquatic plants in the lake. Did I understand that correctly, or was that something that was passed along to me that wasn't necessarily the fact?
I don't think that's true. I know that this year they did use the first product I mentioned, Floridone, which is a whole lake application. So a lot of people consider a whole lake application as a whole lake weed removal, but keeping in mind that Floridone is only allowed by the state of Michigan to be applied at a very low rate of 6 parts per billion, which is selective for Eurasian water milfoil. So the treatment's intent and subsequent results should have been selective control of Eurasian water milfoil without damaging the beneficial native species.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Andy, could you give us 30 seconds on how sonar works? I hadn't heard that technique before.
Yeah, I know Melissa's probably familiar with it because we've implemented it on a gravel lake. I think 2 times in the last 15, 16 years, but it's a, unlike conventional treatments where you're applying the herbicide directly to the weed beds themselves. Sonar is, to put it simply, it's almost like how you'd chlorinate a swimming pool. You know how many gallons of water you have, you know how many ounces of product you need to bring the concentration up in the pool to a certain part per million. Sonar works the same way, where we will calculate the bathymetry of the lake and how to dose it appropriately at a 6 part per billion concentration. Sonar's label allows it to be used much higher than that, but the 6 parts per billion concentration is a dose that's the lowest possible dose that will control Eurasian water milfoil without impacting the native plants. So it's a good way to selectively control milfoil. And since it is applied to the entire water body, it doesn't matter, if the milfoil is hiding under a dock or a boat or, growing in 10 feet of water, it'll get contacted with the product. Typically lakes that use sonar, it provides a pretty good lake-wide reset of the lake. Unfortunately, being a flow-through system, you do have to maintain the levels of sonar for an extended period of time, 60 days plus. So, it would be a very risky option to use in your case.
Okay, thank you. All right, should we move along to Mike Smith, who's next on my list with the Dash Divers?
Hey, how's it going, Ken? Everybody. So I got a chance to talk to Ken a little bit and kind of figure out what you guys got over there. And sounds like you guys got about 20 acres of milfoil. And, to be, I guess, perfectly honest, milfoil is a tool, and our dash diving is a tool to combat milfoil. There's really no silver bullet, I guess, even when you treat. And, the chemicals do a great job. Believe it or not, I'm not anti-chemical at all, even though they're kind of a competition. We're a tool to kind of back that up. 20 acres is probably a little bit more than what dash is cut out for. But what dash can be used is to come in after a chemical treatment a little bit later down the line to get into that maintenance area where you're not continuously, 2 to 3 years dumping chemicals in. It's just, so you want to get into that maintenance area. That's kind of what Eagle has recommended. We've done a lot of stuff and bigger stuff. We've done Lake Leelanau, which is a pretty large lake. They had 9 acres. we got that down to just a little bit under 3. Now, the thing about Lake Leelanau, it's a huge lake with a lot of people living on it with a lot of money. They can afford to do that, have us out there for the whole summer. They've got us out there for the good part of next summer too, to kind of finish up what we're doing. We've done some stuff for the federal government. We've done some for the Forest Service. We've done some stuff for the DNR there at Higgins Lake. We've been as far as New Jersey doing some work out there. And we've kind of been all over. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with what DASH is, it's basically a suction harvesting boat. We take it down, we have a pump, we have a diver that goes down, and we're pulling weeds. DASH is just a fancy way of saying we're pulling weeds underwater. And it sounds a lot cooler when you tell people what you do for a living, other than I pull weeds. So that's kind of where I'm at after talking to Ken, looking over your stuff. We're a tool, but it wouldn't be right of me to say, hey, hire me to come in and do it. We'll take care of it, because it's just not feasible to do 20 acres for us. Now, what we can do is chemical treat, come in afterwards and get that maintenance, so you don't have to chemical it every 2-3 years or whatnot. You know, I'm realistic about what DASH can do, and we do get a lot of business, and I'm booked up both crews all, you know, a year and a half next year. But again, I'm realistic about what we can do, and 20 acres is not something we could do in a year, but we can come in, back it up, and kind of try and keep the chemical level down in the future. That's kind of what we're there for.
Okay, thanks. Any questions of Mike?
Yeah, Mike, if you were, in terms of the native species, and maybe this isn't even an issue because maybe native species can't be touched. But if I think about you as a chaser to the herbicide, would your services have sort of a follow-on impact of things beyond milfoil too that we're dealing with?
As far as, do we avoid the native species?
No, I mean,
Is that what you're asking, I guess?
could you tackle that as well? Or would it be, is your method a safer method to tackle the native species along with the non-natives via chemical?
Well, it's just like the chemicals, we also have a permit, and the permitting is exactly what is listed in it. So if we're going to do milfoil, we have to do milfoil. Now, there is a certain level. I've had Eagle out with me, because there's one other person that does this up in Wisconsin, but they won't even work in Michigan because the regulations are crazy in here. So nobody's gotten into it yet here. Part of me kind of hopes they keep the regulations a little crazy, because it keeps everybody out. But they have a little bit of wiggle room, you know, because you are going to get some native stuff when you're pulling, because a lot of times we're doing in zero visibility. But we keep it pretty low on that. The suction harvester, the boat we use, takes a lot of the silt out and whatnot. So we're pretty good about not keeping the good, or keeping the good stuff there and taking the bad stuff out.
Thank
But
you.
we just, like I said, we still have to follow, just like the chemical folks. We still have permit rules we have to follow.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a quick one for Michael. So 20 acres is too big. We heard Leland, 9 acres doable. Michael, what is your sweet spot in terms of if we use you for spot cleanup? Is it a few acres, 5 acres? What's the short answer?
Well, it depends. And like I told Ken when I talked to him on the phone, usually every time before I would take a job or before we do any kind of contract, I always come in and dive it. I like to get an idea of what we're looking at. Because you can go to a place like Higgins Lake, where in the South Lagoon there, where it's just thick. And it's literally, you can't move without running into it. So you do 3 acres there, it's going to take you a while. Lake Leelanau, the difference is it's a little more spread out. They got on it early. So we, you know, in Higgins Lake, where we can cover, you know, in 10 days, we might be able to do about a half an acre. In Lake Leelanau, in 10 days, we can hit, you know, 2 acres, because it's spread out. We can just, it kind of like plinking and plunking a little bit. And there's some spots that are a little bit thicker, but we were there 30 days. And also Lake Leelanau, they, because we worked under the tribe, they tried some different methods. They put down some barriers down. We did a little bit of barrier stuff on that 9 acres, and then we just dashed around it. That's remained to be seen on how that works. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
I'm going to interrupt for a second. Mike,
Go ahead.
did they have, I feel like they had a video about the benthic barrier that they used.
Yes.
I had forgotten about that. So that might be a good
Mhm.
resource too. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yep, they had a professional video done to do it, and that's really good. And NPR also, National Public Radio out of Interlochen, spent a day with me, and they kind of did a neat story on what we do. But again, we're a tool. We're not the silver bullet. I don't think anybody's the silver bullet in doing it. It's something that's always got to be combated, I guess. There's no set it and forget it, especially when you have an all sports lake where boats are bringing stuff in constantly. It's something, and I tell everybody this, it's something you got to stay on top of. You don't want to let it go for 15, 20 years, or you end up like some lakes with 500 acres on it, and it gets really tough for anybody to deal with.
I have a question.
Karen,
Would a barrier be possible in a river system like we have?
A barrier with Eagle is not possible for really anybody. The state of Michigan does very little research on anything non-chemical. I don't even know if they do research on chemical. I just know my area. They rely a lot on Minnesota and Wisconsin and the stuff that they do. Dash is pretty big in Wisconsin, Minnesota. It's starting to pick up on the East Coast. They don't like barriers for whatever reason. The reason we were able to do that in Lake Leelanau is because it's under a tribe. That's tribal land. So they were able to kind of finagle it. There's still a little friction there with Eagle on that. I think the tribe's going to kind of take Eagle to task on that because it is still under treaty land, I believe. But long answer, the state does not like barriers at all for whatever reason.
other questions? All right, next on the list is Kim Arter. Kim?
Hi, everyone. Hopefully I can add to this conversation. To let you know, I know it says here Bear Lake Association. It's actually a Bear Lake Lake Board that was formed under Act 451 of Inland Lakes and Streams. We had 25 years of an association. The association could only pretty much get 60% of the people to sign off to do anything with the lake. And it basically was just spraying around their dock and killing all the weeds out there. It wasn't managing the whole lake. And that's where the Eurasian milfoil took over in certain areas. And it really became a mess. So 4 years ago, Bear Lake has the city of North Muskegon on one side and Laketon Township on the other side. And I do live on Bear Lake. So between the two government municipalities, we formed a lake board, which does special assess the residents around the lake. Many people just didn't want to do anything, and it was really causing some problems. So in forming the Bear Lake Lake Board, we do have a scientist on board. We do have an engineer on board. We do drag the lake. One end of the lake was so heavy with Eurasian milfoil. If you drove your boat in there, you weren't getting out. You were going to just sit there till someone dragged you out of there. So in getting that, we've gotten that area pretty under control. We've had Eurasian milfoil kind of, I should say Bear Lake's a long lake and it's a shallow lake. And so some of it has floated down the lake. Obviously, we're still seeing spots and we're still spraying, but we're not spraying. Residents don't want any more copper-based spray. The algal blooms were really bad in the lake. And there were areas in the lake that we found that was absolutely no vegetation whatsoever, which didn't seem very good at the time, and it wasn't. So we've been doing this for 4 years. We've really gotten the Eurasian milfoil under control. No more copper-based spraying. Our algal blooms have really not completely gone away, but have dissipated quite a bit. And we will be putting in an aeration system in the spring in Bear Lake. So we've done what we could here, and really it has been working, but of course you got to keep on it for sure.
Questions? All right, Karen, Mike Bauer of the Huron Lakes Weed Control is not with us, correct?
No, he did not join us.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's throw it open to questions and discussion. Aeration is also a technique that we haven't discussed and I'm not too familiar with. Could you, Kim, elaborate a bit on that, or anyone here?
I do know we are in the process of getting our DEQ permits or EGO permits in order to install this. I don't know. I just know there are diffusers. We're putting 32 diffusers in the lake to get things flowing out there. Bear Lake is shallow lake. It's 10 to 12 feet deep. We have a really deep spot at 20 feet, and that's one spot in that whole lake. So we're trying to get these things to flow. Bear Lake does flow into Muskegon Lake, which of course flows into Lake Michigan. So it does take a long time for that lake to turn over. We're hoping to get some aeration in there, get some oxygen moving. We did have an $8 million federal grant for one end of Bear Lake. It had ponds down at that end that were celery ponds for a very long time. They were heavily polluted in there, cleaned all that out. Hopefully that will help our phosphorus levels in Bear Lake. We've seen it go down a little bit, but we think the aeration is going to do a lot more for us. Unfortunately, cleaning those ponds out was a great project, but it's not going to take care of everything.
Yeah, I could add to that too, because I've installed 2 fairly large aeration systems in the last 6 years. The way aeration typically works is there's a diffuser, there's air compressors on the shoreline that pump compressed air through tubing that sits in the lake bottom. The tubing is weighted so it sinks, and then it goes to a diffuser head and creates bubbles. The bubbles themselves don't add air to the water or oxygen to the water, but what it does is as the bubbles rise, it creates a vertical current upwards. So it brings water at the bottom to the surface where it can be replenished with oxygen. So, it is a tool for lakes that have, maybe have oxygen deficiencies or, problems with internal loading, perhaps. We really don't sell it as a milfoil control tool, but it's a tool nonetheless, for more or less water quality enhancements and potential muck reduction. If that muck is organic based, you can aerate the bottom of the lake and allow the bacteria that decompose that material to work a lot better.
I'm reading the material that was sent ahead of time on aeration. It also seems like it's for the right conditions, it's a great long-term solution, but not necessarily a short-term. So it would have to be maybe used as part of a cocktail of something now that takes care of, and then something like aeration that maintains if you have the right conditions around it. Is that accurate?
I'd say, I don't know how many long-term studies there are with aeration. But yeah, it's not a quick fix by any means.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to ask the panel, you know, what we, based on our size, flow, depth, you know, what we could rule out. But, you know, and once again, thank you all for participating in this panel. It sounds like what I'm hearing, and please, anyone on the panel, correct me if I'm wrong, that weevils, aeration, sonar, cutting without collection, dash, none of them sound to be viable for our short-term need. And it seems like, and once again, this is open for discussion. It seems like it's been narrowed down to me that we're going to have to go the herbicide route, at least to start, you know, at least to get the situation under control. It sounds like there's an option for other things to augment that maybe down the road, but just correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm missing something else that is a silver bullet other than going the herbicide route, open it up to the panel just to correct me if I'm letting something go here.
I would say you're pretty spot on there. You know, we thought long and hard about options over at the Wade's Bayou there, and what we came up with was the herbicide program. You know, I really am intrigued by the dash as far as a tool. You know, coming in and touching up some of those areas, because you're never going to get 100% kill off with herbicides, especially when you do have a little bit of flow. Even how small it is, you're going to get a little bit of drift pull there. So aeration in a moving body of water, you know, that creates a whole different animal and a lot of challenges there in itself. Sonar, like you said, it's going to be very difficult to do something like that in a flowing body. It's got to be there 60 to 90 days to be effective. The option we came up with, and what we credit our success to, was correctly identifying the program and the cocktail, so to speak, where we used granular herbicides in some places and some liquid herbicides in other places, a combination of systemic and contact, and that's where we achieved success. It wasn't simply a matter of throwing a lot of tools in there and seeing what works best. It was a matter of, okay, ruling things out as to what we've learned in 25 years of doing this as a degreed biologist, and lots of experience. You know, what have we seen work in the past? What have we not seen work in the past? When you get into a project that's, you know, 10, 15, 20 acres, you want to be pretty spot on before you jump into that. You're talking a lot of gallons or a lot of pounds of herbicide, and you want to make sure that they're placed effectively and properly. You know, so you're going to get the proper effects, you know, the die off of the species in the locations that you want, and two, negate any negative effects, overkill or drift, where you're going to get products that are going to be moving into locations that, one, aren't authorized by a permit, or two, authorized by residents and homeowners that want to stay away. So you know, that's kind of how what we did with the program. We removed things that we didn't think were going to be functional, and then kind of focused on the ones that we knew would be beneficial. And the idea of implementing something like a dash diver to get in there and do an acre or two of some areas instead of coming in and throwing more gallons of herbicide down is an intriguing option. And to be honest with you, I very well may contact Mike in the future here, even regarding next year potentially, for the Bayou, just to maybe implement that in a couple of areas. I think it's an intriguing avenue to proceed with, that's going to have, in my opinion, much fewer potential negative effects on the environment.
It sounds like you're saying that, you know, these plans then have the ability to flex given, you know, how 1 year reacts. The next year you may be able to adjust, you may be able to add some other tools to the program. So that sounds like an option. Like, we're not just married to one course of action.
It has to be that way. It
Okay.
completely has to be that way, because Mother Nature is not going to show you the same thing next year that it showed us this year. You know, we may have higher temperatures, we may have cooler temperatures, we may have less rain, which would incur lower flow. You know, there's going to be a lot of mitigating factors that are going to influence the treatment. So you have to be open-minded, and you have to be able to adapt to the conditions that Mother Nature gives you.
Okay. And then one final one, then I'll pass it on to the rest of the panel. In terms of negative impacts, are you seeing anything in terms of unintended consequences, in terms of what happens to a community's sport fishing economy, in terms of, you know, suddenly if you've taken out this invasive, are people going to start complaining that, you know, they're just not catching fish anymore because the habitat's been radically changed? Is that something we need to be concerned about?
It's always something to be concerned about, just because, you know, that you don't really get a second chance to make a first impression, so to speak. You know, if we came in there and we did a lot of bad things or made some gravest mistakes over on Wade's Bayou, it would have made the press, you know, and we wouldn't have been hired back. So yeah, you certainly have to take that into consideration. In regards to negative consequences, we've fortunately seen zero. You know, we have in the areas where we can't say eradicated because that's a difficult word in this environment. But in the areas where we had a lot of success, we've seen native plants have started to fill in some of those areas. So Mother Nature is kind of doing its job. You know, get rid of the exotics, the over competitive plants and species, and then native plants will establish themselves. They don't compete as aggressively. They don't spread as frequently. They're set for Michigan waters for call it an equilibrium. They all get along, go along kind of thing, as opposed to an exotic that comes in and wipes everything out and takes over. So just in 1 year alone, we've seen some solid results of exotics being removed and some natives just reestablishing themselves. So that's a huge accomplishment for 1 year.
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
well,
Mike.
just to kind of back what I think it's Ryan, I think, kind of what he said is usually when we're out working, we'll probably at least once a week, we'll get a sport fisherman to come up and, hey, why are you taking all the fish cover out? You know, that's where we like to fish. But what you got to explain to them is, well, yeah, that might be good now, but that will, if you let it go, it'll collapse the ecosystem. For the native plants, you know, the native plants, the little critters that eat on that, and then the bigger critters that eat on that. And, you know, before too long, that whole ecosystem crashes. And then those sport fish in the long term aren't going to be there because there's no food source for them. So that's kind of how we tackle that when we've been asked. And we get, like I said, asked about that once a week when we're out on the water. A fisherman will come out because we got this contraption out there. So they're always kind of curious about it. So they'll come out and talk about that stuff. So just kind of backing up what Ryan said, that's pretty accurate.
And I'm going to jump in and mention that, you know, a lot of what we do at Michigan Lakes and Streams Association is to help educate people. And so that's something for you to think about, for you, the city of Saugatuck, when you come in with a plan that's going to help to eradicate, not eradicate, you know, that's like what we'd love, right? To help control the Eurasian water milfoil, you're going to hope to see a return of those native plants. And sometimes there's some misinformation, or it's misconstrued that, oh, they're coming in with herbicide and we're not going to have to worry about plants. Well, the truth is you're not going to be worried about the monoculture of that invasive species anymore. And it's going to it's going to take a while for the other plants to come back and reestablish themselves. You may see another monoculture of a native plant that comes back faster than the other ones, and you have to give it time to be able to work itself out. And I know that often we'll have questions, you know, we'll come in and we'll be doing spot treatments or, you know, some sort of maintenance treatments of invasive species in a lake, and someone will be like, oh, but I still see all of these plants and they're all, you know, around my dock, and, you know, and so there's a education piece to this, that those are good plants. There are good plants, and, you know, it's okay if you're concerned and you want to figure out which plant it is, because, you know, we want to know if there's an invasive species that needs to be taken care of somewhere. But, you know, it is okay that there are plants, and there needs to be plants. You know, I mean, Michael's talking about fishermen. They want the plants. And then there's also other types of people recreating who are suspicious of the plants because they have a different idea in their head of what the lake ought to look like. So there's always that education piece about what's best for the water.
Melissa, does your association put together any resources that one can use to educate a community? Like Douglas, Saugatuck has a lot of people that are extremely environmentally minded, and I could easily see a situation where a number of folks would have a very reflexive reaction to chemical treatment. And I just want to make sure that we are armed with, if we go the herbicide route, that we're armed with third-party resources that sort of help explain and maybe allay some fears. Do you have that, or can you recommend? I mean, my department does, Eagle does that, but I'm just wondering if your association does as well.
Yeah, some of the resources we would use, we would get from Eagle, but I will, I'll take a look at the brochures and things that I have and see if I have something that would fit your need for this. But I do, you know, I mean, this is a very common concern that people have about using herbicides. I'm very freaked out about that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I jump in there too and add, the Michigan Aquatic Managers Association does also put out a number of pieces of literature that, you know, explain herbicide safety testing, MSU, as well as MSU extension.
Would that be through the Annis Institute?
What's that?
Would that be through the Annis Institute?
You know, you probably just have to contact your local field office or just the MSU extension in general.
The Michigan Applicators site he mentioned was MAMA. I believe it's www.mama.com.
Okay.
Any other questions for? Well, why don't we go around the table of the committee here and get your thoughts. Dean, you want to start us off?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Once again, I just can't thank the panelists enough for taking the time to present. I really appreciate your openness to this discussion, your candor in terms of what will work, what probably won't work, what we should be thinking about down the road. So all I can say is thank you and have a great Thanksgiving.
Okay, thanks. Bob, anything?
Yeah, really ditto to what Dean said. I learned a lot here. I had one quick question for, again, the aquatic doctors. Are you guys applying the herbicides all the way to the shoreline? Or is there a zone between, for example, we have 40-foot docks. Would you go to the edge of the dock or in between the docks? What would be your thought process? Guessing right now, Ryan?
That would be, you know, that's kind of up to you guys. I mean, we can add, you know, what areas you guys want treated to that permit, and we can target them, like I said, going along with the state of Michigan's regulations. And we can target the species in by the docks just as easy as we can target the species offshore.
The main difference between the two is going to be the regulatory issues that you run into the state. If you're talking shoreline areas, you're going to be you're going to find much more authorization to treat native plants and to use a wider variety of herbicides. When you get out into the deeper areas, the offshore areas, so to speak, that's where they're going to be very limiting, and they're going to be very focused on exactly milfoil, invasive species. So yes, we can go right up to the shoreline. We can stop and leave a buffer zone. Really, that's going to be based on your requirements and your needs.
Are you having like an extensive issue with navigability that's due to native plants? Is that why we keep talking about controlling native plants? I'm just curious.
I'm just trying to differentiate the two, just to establish that it's not just a matter of using different products, but the state of Michigan is going to have different regulations and different viewpoints on that as well. So when you talk about treating the shoreline, yeah, you can treat the shoreline, but we're also it's going to be an issue of we're able to use different products because they have a different mentality about the shallower areas and closer up to shoreline. They're going to be much more open-minded to do that because they find that it's going to be more effective to clean up the areas of use. You know, the idea behind the state of Michigan's philosophy is aquatic nuisance control. They want you to follow the idea that you're cleaning up nuisance areas. You're not eradicating. You're not removing species. You're dealing with the areas of nuisance. And when you get into shoreline areas in 5-foot depth less, they have a whole different set of regulations and rules to follow. That was my only point there.
Oh, yeah, no, I was more asking the committee.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
We'll get out of here.
If there's a problem with native plants, because I know that's something that that we try to steer people away from. I mean, especially because you know, you were discussing that you have some environmentally minded people in the area, and they may be opposed to herbicides or hesitant about herbicides in the first place. You know, focusing it on the invasive to make sure that the native has the best chance to.
Yeah, you know, to my knowledge, and I've been boating on the lake for almost a dozen years, I've never run into a problem with native plants. Actually, we hadn't had problem with weeds until the milfoil came along.
Right.
You other guys, the boaters, would you agree?
Yeah, and Ryan, my question was, and let me slightly reframe it. Can you easily get a permit to apply the herbicides right up to the seawall, break wall, where our docks extend from? I mean, it's a anthropogenic shoreline where for much of, you know, Kalamazoo Lake, and that's really what I'm asking.
We got authorization from the state for Wade's Bayou. I would see nothing at this point to differentiate the two as far as why they would authorize them and not you. So my initial belief would be, yes, we would be able to get authorization for that.
Right.
If we did it, that would be on your request, so to speak, but we
Okay.
should be able to get authorization.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, but useful. Thanks.
Let's see, other committee members. Pat, any comments?
Yes, I'd like to thank the panel also for coming out today and commend Karen for doing a great job in facilitating this. I have a couple of things. I really do think we have a problem with native species. Duckweed has been a real problem in the harbor. And that's a native, if that's a native species, and I think it is. And hopefully getting rid of the milfoil will help get rid of this duckweed problem also. And I have over at our docks, we have coontail weed as well as a milfoil, and they're floating. So we do have some problems with native weeds, and hopefully if we get milfoil under control. Then the other comment that I had is that I'm really ready to make a decision on this, but I would like to put that off for another meeting. And I would like to recommend to the committee members, there's an article, Management of Aquatic Plants by the State of Michigan Department of Environment. I really think it really fits us here well, because not only does it talk about treatment for the immediate future, but it talks about long-term. And I'm a proponent of long-term, which means getting rid of some of these nutrients that come into the harbor. And I understand that's a long-term problem, but people are working on that in other areas. And I think it's something that maybe we could consider after we tackle this problem. So those are my comments. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, good comments, Pat. You're right. You're spot on. Let's see, who haven't I tabbed here yet? Tapped. Karen, do you have anything?
No, I'm good. Learned a lot. Thank you.
Jim, I don't know if I called on you, did I?
No, that's okay. I don't have much to add. I echo everything Pat said. I think you're asking a good question, Melissa, about the native plants. I think duckweed is a big issue, but based on what I'm hearing from everyone in these meetings, I feel like we're unclogging the pipes a bit by addressing the milfoil issue, which I think will help. I'm a big leave the spots on the apples, leave me the birds and the bees sort of person. So I would hope that duckweed is a native plant. It will always be around. It does a good thing. We just have too much of it. And I feel like that's largely because of everything we've talked about. I guess my only other comment, I echo the thank yous, because you've each brought another dimension to this that I didn't know about. I do feel like long-term, it will be a combo platter. It's not going to be one solution. I think it's going to be some sort of combo platter cocktail of management. And I think that's where we have an opportunity to engage the community too. For people that, you know, may be averse to initially using a herbicide, but it's an education and conversation process of what we need to do now that is safe and aggressive, and what we need to do long term that might be safe and sustainable.
If I can just jump on, because you guys talked a little bit about nutrients before, and one thing I notice diving is I can always tell when I'm underwater who's using or not chemicals, but fertilizers on their lawns. That's a huge thing that'll drive this problem. The other thing is septic tanks. I don't know how that is in your area. Up here where I'm at, we're real rural, so a lot of septic tanks been in there for 100 years. That'll contribute to the substrate getting really just perfect for these invasives to grow in. So, you know, one thing I'd say that's free that you guys can do is just educate your people on the lake about using stuff on their lawns on the lakeside. That's free for you guys to do. Maybe get some signs up if you don't have them already on your boat launches that just warns people about the invasive species. And some of the smaller lakes, even, they'll just go and put a little wash site up, not an expensive one, just little clippers and a brush, and asking them, you know, to check their boats when they come and go. Something very inexpensive for you guys to do, and it does help. The fertilizers, just educating people on that, and educating people when they put the boats in and whatnot.
Stopping the fertilizer, and then the other thing I was going to add too, Mike, is encouraging some native plantings on the shorelines, because then that will reduce runoff from lawns and any other nutrients that are getting in the lake from the land around it. So, you know, natural shorelines are big, no fertilizers. All those best management practices will all contribute to the reduction of excess plant growth of any kind in the water body. So
I thought I was done with the questions, but I have to ask, given that we've got you all here, is there anybody within Allegan County or Kalamazoo counties that we as a city council and Douglas as a city council should be engaging with to address some of these long-term issues, you know, given that we are basically at the end of the pipe here, at the end of the watershed? Any names that we should really be, or organizations that we should be engaging in more aggressively?
Drain commissioners usually play a pretty big role. They're very knowledgeable of most of the systems in their area. They're gonna have, you know, any kind of drains where flows begin. They might be somebody that can coordinate some specifics that would be helpful for you.
the watershed, I don't know if you guys have engaged with the Watershed Council in the area, but the Watershed Council might be a good place to go, as well as your SISMA. Have you guys talked to anybody in your SISMA? It's the Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area, and they have state resources that they can use for invasive species projects. They've done a lot of terrestrial projects, a lot of on-land projects, but some of the SISMAs are starting to get into more aquatic species as well. So that might be somebody for you to talk to.
If any of you have names or numbers and can send them to Karen, we'd be grateful.
Yeah, I'll write that down. Mm-hmm.
Scott, the Harbor Authority studied this issue a couple of years ago. Pat, I think you were still on when we talked about this. And you know, the most serious contributors are the farming community. Yep. And at one time, it's my understanding that the state provided subsidies to farmers who agreed to not plant right up to the river's edge, and that has gone away. Those I've talked with who are familiar with doing that felt that that was a very, very effective way of containing the problem. So that might be something. I don't know if it's the Harbor Authority who revisits that issue, but it's really a state issue, and it's a political issue.
Yeah. Maybe we need to find a way to get the various river communities together to lobby at a state level, to find ways to protect the watershed. I think we're particularly vulnerable given that, we are sort of at the mouth of the river. And so we're getting all of it for the most part, with the exception of some of the growth upstream that tends to act as a absorbent or a buffer, if you will. But
Yeah, most of it comes down to us. We're a silt trap.
yeah.
Ken,
Okay.
I think, and just one more thought there. The Watershed Council is a very good place to go. I've been there, and Kaiser engineers are really knowledgeable about this whole process. And I know that they'd be happy to talk with us again about what's going on in neighboring watersheds and how we could start a long-term program. Again, it's not short-term, it's long-term, generational, really.
Indeed.
Okay, folks, this has been a great meeting. And once again, I'd like to thank our guests for spending time with us. It's been very, very valuable. Our next meeting is December 9th. And I'm sensing that the committee is pretty much on the same page in terms of how we want to approach this initially as a kind of a herbicide issue to eradicate as much of the weeds as we can, and then have a long-term strategy that might be multifaceted. So I'd like to see at our next meeting that we think about a recommendation that we could make the city council as to how we would wish to move forward. We may have to also consider the funding mechanisms and the permission mechanisms. So that could be part of our discussion as well. As Ryan has pointed out, the timing of this is perfect because we need to get whatever we're going to do approved early next year, and then begin getting the permissions and getting everything in effect so that we're ready to jump into this next spring.
And just to build on that, Ryan, can you give us a sense on when we should try to, as a council, be pulling the trigger on some decision, given what what a group like you have to do to go through Eagle and to get the permits in place? Is December 9th, when should we have a go, no go decision on a course of action?
I think your December 9th is fine. Right around there would be just fine. The one thing I will say is the state of Michigan is going to require the authorizations before they'll issue the permit. It's kind of their authorization. They need to have that in hand. The permit process it usually is going to take. I think they're pretty much required to have it issued once we submit it, about 30 business days after it's submitted. So that should be okay. My suggestion is it Jennifer, right? Jennifer at the City of Douglas.
Yep.
Jennifer is
Jenny Pearson.
Yep, she's wonderful to work with. She's done this. She may have some very good recommendations on how you contact people in the easiest way possible. And whatever they did, it worked very well. And I would say she would probably be a wonderful resource to kind of pick her brain a little bit about what tools she used to get it done effectively and quickly.
Okay.
Ryan, when you say authorizations, you mean from the individual landowners?
Yes, Karen.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And the
Okay,
city.
Karen, sorry.
Unless the only thing that would change that is unless there is an association that has basically the board of directors. If that's been voted upon and you have a formal association that has authorization to make decisions for the riparians, then the board's authorization will be sufficient. If you don't have that kind of formal lake board, then individuals will have to be authorized each one. Each property lot would have to have an authorization.
How about for a condo association type thing?
You probably could get away with that condo associate, one person, one signature for that association, as long as like I said, as long as it's a formal, most condos are formal like that. Homeowners associations, a lot of that. There are some guidelines, so to speak, that has to qualify for an official board. But mainly it's the voting goes in and you've authorized a board of directors, so to speak, to make decisions for the group. If you have that in place, you only need one signature. Wade's Bayou did not have that in place, so we needed to get every individual lot's authorization.
Good. And much of the ownership around the lake, at least on our side over here, is made up of condos. And I think they're all in associations. And so it won't be as difficult as it would be if we had to get all the individuals. Okay, Karen, did you have anything to add?
I've got one more question and I could probably ask it on the side. Would we have to get permissions from everyone on the lakeshore or only in this area?
Only
That
in the
we're-
treated areas.
Okay,
Yep, so the lot owners that are in the treated areas. If you're more than 100 feet away from a treated area, you would not need their authorization. Certainly, we would want to notify them, but we would not need their authorization.
okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, well, thanks to everybody again, and I think we're ready to adjourn unless anyone has some final comments.
Yeah, just thank you for having us. We appreciate your guys' time, and
Mhm.
we look forward to potentially working with you guys.
Thank you to everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Karen, I'll send you some of those educational resources and some contacts for the group too.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it.
All right, Karen,
I just,
since this is an official meeting, do we need a roll call vote to adjourn it?
I put one on there, so I don't think we need a roll call though. Kim had a question yet too, though.
Okay, Kim, go ahead.
I just wanted to let everybody know that part of what our Bear Lake Board did also is we put out information to every homeowner on the lake. Just a reminder with the fertilizers and best practices. And that really did seem to help. But if anyone's interested on what we've been doing, our maps, all of the things that we've done in Bear Lake is on our website. It is at www.laketon.org. And you'll see a little button there that says BLLB, which is the Lake Board. So we're not an association, we are a lake board. And one of our members on our board is our drain commissioner. So that really helps. We've had our drain commissioner do some things as far as slowing some flow into Bear Lake and doing some filter marshes and things like that. So those things all help too in the end. So if you're interested, all of our work for the last 4 or 5 years is on that website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, then, unless there's any other comment, we'll consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.